How are you guys today? I just kind of want to tell you, a little about my life story and, kind of how I got to where I am right now, presently. And there's a lot to be said, to be fully honest. Where to start? I guess let me give you a brief intro of what I'm about to tell you. What I'm about to tell you is really, a testimony of my life of, going from a depressed state into like darker depressed states and whatnot. But even before that, as when I was a kid, I used to be the most happiest kid there was. I just recently actually watched some videos, about that, about just me as a kid, and it kind of blew me away because, as the years went on, I saw myself so incredibly happy when I was a kid, so curious, if you will. And then as time went on, things changed. The reason why things changed is, as a young kid, I should say, I didn't really realize it. I thought it was just growing up, but as time goes on and you reflect back, you get more clarity and understanding to it all. And like I said, let me just jump back. So before I was 1 year old, really, I was about, I think, 3.5 months to 4 months years old. I went overseas, and we were overseas for about, I would say, almost a year or so. And then we had to come back because of me. I had an eye deficiency, if you will. I used to look like this, just to look straight. And my parents, they were missionaries, so we had to come back over. I had the eye surgery and whatnot. And then I was living with my grandparents for a while. And then after that, we kind of moved to Pennsylvania. I don't know if any of you all are familiar with Pennsylvania, but it's a really nice place. I was there for almost 20 years of my life. But to fast forward that, those were some good days, if you will. I was growing up in a pretty large family. There was 7 kids, and then my mom and my dad. For a while, it was just my 3 older brothers. I was the youngest of them all, and as you grew up experiencing that, I'm sure a lot of you can relate. Maybe some of you can't, but if you're the younger child, you always are pushed under, if you will. Not necessarily because your brothers are trying to, or your sisters are trying to, depends what you have. It's just how human nature works and whatnot. And for me, I guess I felt, really pushed under as a kid. For years my brothers and I, we got along for, quite a while. And then as maturity comes into play and whatnot, they kind of slowly pushed me away. And when they did that, for me personally, they were like my best friends and whatnot. I guess you could say it started turning this negative side of me on. Right around that same time period, my best friend died, which was a dog, and it turned into my best friend because it was the only person I could spend time with. My parents, they're workaholics, if you will, and it's not their fault. They had to provide for us and whatnot, but I ran into this lonership as the times went on. And when I say times, by this time I was around like 7 to 8 years old. As time went on, I really became this loner. For so long I thought, to get in with my brothers, to be on their good side, if you will. I tried so hard. And, the more I tried, the more I got actually discouraged. My dad actually would jump in and say, oh, you gotta make him, you gotta be allowing Johnny to be a part of everything you're doing. And what it actually did was actually created more separation because they didn't like that. And I don't blame them now, reflecting back, but as a kid, I really, really took it hard. To the point, I started not liking my dad because every time he would do that, I actually had counteractions that were worse than if he didn't do nothing. As in my brothers would just like completely disappear on me, and I would try to find them. As years went on, I finally just gave up on that. And once I did that, it actually started slowly throwing me into a depressed state. I wasn't aware of this as a kid, but I started thinking more negative because, so much negativity was happening to me. Understand though, I had a lot of positive stuff growing up, a lot of it. But the negative side of my being turned on, and once that kind of triggered and really went into play, I think it changed me because I saw everything negative, like everything negative. Until this day, I have to fight to look at anything positive. And it really screwed up my head, to be fully honest. Screwed it up in the sense I started having self-pity parties, and not just, for a day or two. I'm talking about for years, self-pity parties. And if you do that to yourself, it really, really can do some really psychological damage to yourself, because you start thinking of self, self, self. And it's human nature to do that, by all means. But I guess I took it to a really far degree, you know. By the time I was really into this, I had 3 younger sisters on top of all of that. So I couldn't say, you know, I didn't have people to reach out to. I chose to go on a loner path. And because of that, you can almost say I raised myself as an only child in my mind. Not because that was the reality, it's just because I spent more time with myself than anyone else, because my own company was the best company I could rely on. Everyone else would hurt me in one way or the other, and don't get me wrong, we had good times and whatnot, but at the end of the day, I felt the happiest by myself. As the years went on, by the time I was age 12 and a half to 13, my dad being a pastor, I don't know, I got more criticism, but on a religious side, you know, I started going to church, trying to blend in with what was going on in society back then, and to nowadays it's not such a big deal, but older people would criticize what I was wearing, and they always put us on a high pedestal, very high. And if you're put on such a high pedestal when you're just young yourself, you start getting more negative, already having a negative view. By age 12 and a half to 13, I said, you know what, I'm going to hell. Why? Because I can't live up to everyone's expectations, not my dad's, not my mom's, no one's. And once I decided that I'm going to hell, my life went from, you know, depressed into a very depressed state. At first it wasn't the case. At that time period, I started listening to music, like heavy duty music, you know. And I started listening to, at first it was alternative, country, you know, then it started progressing into like hard rock, slowly into even some metal, which to this day I really don't understand that whole music side, but I started kind of liking it. The reason why is I could relate to it, all the anger, all the frustration. Then I got into rap and I fell in love with it. A lot of it had to do with just me as an individual. I think very fast-paced and whatnot, so fast-paced music, you know, it made me not think as much because I had to think about what was being said in the music. And the music that was being played, you know, at first it was so innocent. I say that in the sense I was just not thinking. When I would listen to the music, I wasn't thinking. But as the music progressed and you listen to it over and over and over, it starts to do something to you. You start to take what's being said and start to reflect on it. You do that naturally, whether you like it or not. You just naturally do that because it's going from your frontal lobe into your subconscious, and once it's in your subconscious, it comes into your reality as time progresses. For me, I fell in love with music because it was my escape, if you will. On top of that, you know, I started falling in love with just movies. Anything that would take my mind off the reality of the moment, I loved it. I think a lot of us to this day do that. Even me, I catch myself once in a while doing that. To this day, I'm addicted to music. I try to be more selective and more, you know, healthier, if you will, on those type of choices and whatnot. But as a kid, I just took everything in, anything and everything, you know. It doesn't matter how bad it was, how good it was just anything to get my mind off things. Once things really, you know, took off on that side, I really fell in love with it, like hardcore. It became like my God, if you will. Saying I'm going to hell, I told myself, you know, you might as well be a humanist. As that kind of went into play, my dad started, you know, fighting for my soul, if you will, and started actually doing more damage in the reality of it than anything good about it. The reason why is at that age, you know, 13 to 14, anything you tell a kid, they're going to do the opposite. That's just psychologically proven. And yeah, I was going through that phase of rebellion, if you will, but my rebellious side, if you will, really took hold and stayed held of me for a very long time. But before I know it, you know, I was a humanist and an atheist, and then I, you know, started digging into it, started like contemplating within my mind, you know, does that make sense? And I started connecting the pieces, like, you know, there has to be a higher power, there has to be a good and evil out there. You know, even music itself talks about God and the devil. And, you know, for me, it started to click more, you know, yeah, there's definitely good out there, but at the same time, I'm already doing more evil than I am good. People already told me, you know, you're some Satanist kid or whatnot. And that started to click in my head hearing that. oh, you're some Satanist kid, you're gonna go to hell. So I started to really dwell on such a thing as that. By the age 15 and a half to 16, I started writing music, rap music, and I fell in love with it because it was just, this puzzles I was trying to build. At first, I just started creating anything that rhymed. I mean, anything that rhymed, I wrote it. It didn't care if it made sense or not, as long as it rhymed, that was all that mattered. And it made me super excited. To this day I write, and I write because it's actually a very good therapeutic, practice to do, to write any of your mind problems out, if you will, or just writing in general. Other people, they play instruments and music, and there's all kinds of ways to have a therapeutic way of dealing with stress and whatnot. The more I wrote, though, the more I started realizing, I'm not so bad at this. And the reason I say that is I threw my passion and my all into it. And as a kid, if you do that, you're at the beginning stages to learn anything and everything. So as I was learning all this, it really took a hold of me in the sense, at the moment it was a good thing, because during this stage I was, in a very deep state of depression. And the depression was, on a daily, I was told, kill yourself. Why? Because reality sucked. You're going to school, there for 8 hours, come home, do homework, and then on top of that, when you get home, you're by yourself anyway. If not, you're getting yelled at by your dad, your brothers don't want to hang out with you. You're dealing with so much negative that, it was almost a reality of clarity to say, oh yeah, man, end it. At least your problems are solved. But the more you dwell on that, the more you're like, well, that's just losing all of the potential you could do. For me, at a young age, I saw things differently, and I knew I did. And I guess because I saw stuff differently no one else could relate to, a lot of people picked on me because of it, just because I would say things that weren't normal, if you will. And I had good friends growing up, don't get me wrong, but as the years go on and you have to move as being a pastor's kid, those friends just disappear on you. And when they disappear on you, you start getting this whole mentality of, well, you better not hold nothing too close to you, because if you do, they're going to disappear anyway. On top of that, your own brothers don't want to be around you. Your dad, he talks more negative stuff than positive stuff, and when he talks positive stuff, it's all godly. And I guess, I never had a good father, role model, if you will. Don't get me wrong, I did, but then I didn't. But then you have to understand his past and his father's past and whatnot. His father was workaholic and whatnot, and I guess that took play and hold. And now that I look at it, I don't hold nothing against it. But as a kid, I guess you put a higher pedestal to your father. You put a higher pedestal to everyone that's older than you. The older I got, the more I saw anyone's flaws. Reason why is, I had so much time to reflect on everything. And every time I reflected, I would reflect on myself. It was just human nature too. But I would reflect and dig deep into it, like deeper than most people would, I would like to say. After, dealing with depression for years and years, by the age of 14, I was smoking a lot of weed then. At first, I was in the barn with my bro, and I noticed, he was being mischievous, if you will. He was trying to hide something, and I'm like, what is this kid up to? And it was easy for me, I should say, to find out. So I did some scooping, found out he was smoking something, and I was like, yo, what are you smoking? And he was like, oh, none of your business, get out of here and whatnot. His friends were with him also, and they weren't the best influence, if you will. I don't think any of us kind of were back in those days, to be fully honest. But before I found out what he was doing, I was like, oh man, I heard something about that. You're watching movies and whatnot, you hear about it, but at that kid being so innocent and whatnot, you didn't really know what was going on. But I tried it, and when I tried it, this depression lifted, all this worries, all this everything lifted. The reason why is, you smoke something, your brain just gets pushed back, if you will, your reality rises and whatnot. And I shouldn't say your reality does, that's maybe not the best way to explain it, but anyone who has smoked weed understands what I'm talking about. Whatever's bothering you usually disappears out of your mind, and you start finding stuff interesting. For me, it was like being a kid for the first time again. I saw a banana, I'm like, yo man, this banana's looking, crazy. You feeling it, it feels a little different, then you eat it and you're like, wow man, that's like eating for the first time again. And I fell in love with it because I hated everything else in my reality that when I did that, a new reality started taking hold. But the reality that was taking hold, to be fully honest, was a reality that had no God in it, no really anything of morals, just self-please, pleasure, anything along the lines of that. And I did that for years, you know. I smoked on a daily pretty much for almost 3.5 years, like every single day being stoned type of high. And at such a young age, that really can mess up your brain. And you know, now that I think about it, it's only by God's grace that I really still have a clear head, to be honest. A lot of people can fight against, oh, weed doesn't do too much to you, it doesn't hurt you and whatnot, but reality-wise, it does quite a lot on you. To reflect back on it now, the best way to explain it is you have two brains. You have a sober side and an unsober side. Many people refer to it as in, you know, oh, that was my drunk side, or that was my high side and whatnot. The reality is, it's their reality on their high side, their reality on their drunk side. By age 16, I was drinking pretty heavily too, and whatnot. And back in those days, even till this day, I should say, it's probably even easier to get your hands on stuff like that. If you have friends and whatnot, and you can just get the connections, and bam, it happens. But to put that into a spiritual side, I was spiritually dead by that point. Now understand, you know, being raised around a pastor, my dad, you always are hearing religion, but if you heard religion all your life to that point, and then at age 12, you're like, yeah, man, God, he's just judge. Oh, he's hateful. He's going to throw you into this hellhole, you know, if you don't follow his rules. You're kind of like, yo, God, get out of my life, because you're not really doing nothing for me. Obviously, I'm wanting to kill myself on a daily still. And look, let me, I guess, step into that, as in, you know, the longer I smoked, the depressed state still kept creeping in. But now it's worse, you know. I had to be high not to feel that. And like, I mean, I could be high, and my high would slowly come down, and that depressed state would come in, so I'd have to boost myself up again. And, you know, before you know it, you get the definition of a stoner. You know, like a stoner basically wakes up, they smoke. 2 or 3 hours later, they smoke again. 2 or 3 hours after that, they smoke again, and you do that until you go to bed. That's your medication, if you will. And it becomes like an entrapment, by all means. The longer you smoke, the more you realize that, you know, you're like, oh, what happened to my money and whatnot? Which I should touch on that. I was blessed by a lot. I had a job from age like 13 on. Even prior to that, I would do odds and ends jobs, making some few money here, and I'm very good with my money. But I started working at a bakery, and I loved it, you know, being depressed and whatnot. You go into work, you have to do something. You don't have the luxuriousness to just think and sit there and do nothing. So I was blessed, and I completely loved it, but it was a curse in one, if you will, because yeah, it helped, but it also helped finance anything I wanted to do. And you know, my parents by this point knew I was up, you know, doing stuff like that, you should say. Especially by age like 15. You could really say that, mainly because my brothers did the same exact thing, so they took it out of control. And then, you know, once the door was open, you could say the Pandora's box, or the inside of the bad stuff that's going on, you know, it was kind of pretty obvious. Oh, well, yeah, your brother's probably doing that too, and then, you know, bam, you couldn't hide it. But that was actually a bad thing. Once they knew, he was like, well, I don't care, man. You obviously don't care too much about me. We're living 2 different lives. You know, my dad being religious, my mom being religious, my sisters being religious. You know, I kind of kept from them. By age 15, my brother was kicked out of the house a year later than I was. Which let me actually touch into why, though. By age 15 and a half, how do you say this? By age 15 and a half, you know, I kind of touched base back on it a little while ago, was, you know, hearing this idea of Satan, Satan, this and that, you know, within music, then with my dad saying, oh man, you're worshiping the devil by not coming to God and whatnot, it clicked to me, you know, well, you have good and evil out there. God obviously can help you, because I'm not no dummy, if you will. Even in those days, I knew God could really help you, but I thought I was cursed, to be fully honest, you know. I never felt loved, which is crazy, because I was loved beyond loved, but I never felt it. It was kind of strange, to say the least. And then, you know, you see evil out there, and then you hear music, and basically people, you know, like, oh, I sold my soul and I got this. I did tons of research. I'm a researcher, by the way, and I did research on that, and you know, I started connecting the pieces. Well, how do you sell your soul? Like, I literally typed that into Google, how do you sell your soul to the devil? And all kinds of crazy stuff popped up. but I read it anyway because, you know, I was like, well, hey man, it's interesting to say the least. Doesn't hurt to at least know about it. So if your dad tells you something about it, you can boom boom with some ammunition back, well, blah 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 this and whatnot. But by the time I did that though, you have to understand, you're opening a realm of the spiritual warfare, the spiritual side, if you will, that many people aren't aware of. You know, if you seek after God, God will come to you. But if you seek after the devil will come to you too. But understand, you're opening that door. The devil is always going to be around us. There's nothing to do about that until God comes and whatnot. But the second I sought after it, I'll tap back in on a rapping level and, you know, writing. I noticed my writing getting better and better. You have to understand though, once I started doing this, I started praying to the devil, and you know, at first I did it half jokingly, like, yeah, you know what, it doesn't hurt, that's what people say you gotta do, so you might as well do it. So I started, and I noticed this presence coming around. What I mean by that is, like, you literally felt this presence coming around. You know, people could say, man, you're stoned, so, you know, how was that really the reality? The reality was, it was reality, because the farther along I progressed it and such, the more I knew it was reality. You know, I would write stuff and look at it and I'm like, yo man, I was stoned, drunk out of my brains, but yet I wrote this? What? You know, like, that just didn't add up, if you will. Which was actually, it was, you know, now I look back at it, it's kind of crazy, but, you know, in the moment I was like, wow man, you know, the devil, he's really progressing me onward, man, I better continue going forth. And I did, you know, as in, you know, 3 a.m. getting up, going in the middle of the woods, you know, to find the devil, if you will. You know, people will say, yo, you serious when you say that? Oh yeah, I was serious. I went out there scared out of my brains to find the devil, because I knew who the devil was. You don't mess with the devil and, you know, expect positive income out of it. I should vice versa that, or restate that. You could expect positive income if you sell your soul, as in if you give all of your allegiance to him. But I didn't want to ever do that because I heard too many crazy stories of that. So, you know, the reality wise is God, you know, really was protecting me. You have to understand my mom too. She was a prayer warrior. Until this day she is. And, you know, you can't ever discredit her. Even growing up, you know, she always been an angel in my eyes. That's the only way to really describe her, as an angel, because, yeah, my dad had anger issues, which he's a lot better, by the way, now. But back in the day, you know, you kind of viewed him as the devil, or I should say I did. I knew how to push his buttons to make this guy infuriated. So infuriated, you're like, wow man, you're a pastor? Huh, yeah, good luck with that type of thing, you know? And as life progressed on just me and my dad going back and forth like that, I was the instigator, if you will. I knew how to push his button. On top of that, I'm praying to the devil, and the devil is working in me to work against him, because he's doing God's work, I'm doing the devil's work at that point. And, you know, you have to really understand that was the reality. If you put that into perspective though, my dad, I put him through hell, man. I put this guy through so much hell. It's only a miracle he's still alive. I know I had him at the point one day that he was saying he was going to kill himself and stuff. I was like, yeah, see, you're trying to say I'm not demon possessed? No, I just made you demon possessed. I have clear proof of it now. I witnessed it. And, you know, if you talk to him now, I don't think he remembers it, to be fully honest. I really don't think he does, because I talked to him, you know, about it after it happened. He's like, I don't remember that. And then I started, you know, doing a little thinking of it. I literally got this guy so enraged he lost himself. Lost himself, meaning the devil fully possessed him. And that can happen. It can happen. I mean, you don't want to hear that, but it can happen. That's why you know, the Bible says to control your temper and whatnot, because, you know, that's inviting legions of demons upon you and whatnot. And it could be scary, if you will, but that's why, you know, God is that much. That's why God's that needed in your life. Anyways, my dad realized, you know, me and him weren't getting along, so more or less he had no other choice to kick me out. He blames it on, well, you're being a bad influence to your sisters and whatnot. And I was, don't get me wrong, but I really did keep to myself. And I would like to say he, with his loud voice, made everyone know what was going on. I mean, that's how I view it to this day. Because that's really what the reality was. He didn't know how to keep it to himself. And that's just how he is. You know, you can't change that. After getting kicked out, I went down south to Florida at age 16, you know. being kicked out, dropped out of high school by that point, 10th grade out. You know, I was full force demonized, going for the devil, going for fame, going for all of that because I really had nothing to lose, like nothing at all to lose. I already lost my family, if you will. You can't, lose more than that. On top of that, you never really felt love for them. You don't really care, so you kind of turned into this heartless guy, this emotionless guy that would just do anything out of impulse. And I would look in the mirror on a daily and not recognize myself. I would look in there and be like, I see you, but no, I'm just referring to I see you, demon. No, I don't see me, Johnny. And the more I became aware of that, the more I knew I had potential. On the satanic side, I knew I had great potential, because if you're already that far in, you know the devil's leading you somewhere. So I went down to Florida. Things didn't work out with my brother and whatnot, and it was really God working in there, because if I would have stayed down there, I really could have took off on a famous level very quickly, just because of the ecosystem I was into. Back up north, I'm in the middle of nowhere, and if you're in the middle of nowhere, it does it limits you quite a lot. And whatnot. Anyways, I was only down there for about 3 months, if that, to be honest, because my brother was married by that point, and I don't know, I think I scared his wife, to be honest, which I guess who wouldn't be. You come in there and I worship the devil and all that stuff. People, they don't take that lightly. Till this day, people that, you say that, oh, it's acceptable in society because you hear it all the time, but go talk to someone who actually really says that and fully means that, you're going to scare them, because that's, you're saying, yeah, I chose pure evil. Most people deep down don't want that, even myself. And yeah, the more I, got into everything, by age like 17, I really noticed that I was this monster. I was monsteristic, if you will. Yeah, I was just straight up monster. There's no other way to put it. I was enraged in seconds if I wanted to, but that was the crazy thing. I could control my emotions a lot of the time. And people never understood that. How could someone be so far gone, but then so in control? And I didn't even understand that until, the more I reflect on it, and reflect on it, I mean by having God help me reflect on it. And the reality was, that's how much God was in my life in those days. Because reality-wise is, yeah, you don't have no control if you're on the devil's side. You really don't, because the devil is controlling. By the age 18, I got myself so far on a satanic level that fame was around the corner. And I say that in the sense, the more you get connected on the devil's side, you have to understand society is running on that, on a full force. Just look at society. What do you see more than anything? You see evil. You really see evil. And if you're seeing evil all the time, people don't connect to puzzle pieces. It's quite simple. Who's in charge? What are they doing? Is it on a good level or is it on a bad level? Yeah, the devil, he's manipulative in the sense, like, yeah, even when I was trained to be a prince, someone so innocent looking, so, nice, so loving, so caring, but so evil all in one. And that's how the devil works. He's a snake, he's a serpent. He doesn't want to come around being all evil, because that would ruin his side of inviting people in, if you will. That's why he invites people in and they don't even know it, 9 out of 10. I was trained that way, to be so innocent, so kind, so loving, so gentle, but you pushed the wrong button, that was the end of you. And I mean that in a sense, with words, I could just ruin you in seconds. That's what I was trained to be, I was being trained to be an instrument of destruction. Many people don't want to view it that way, but think about it. Most mainstream people on the music industry, on even the acting side, do a little research on them. They're clearly, not all of them by the way, but a pretty large majority will openly tell them, they worship the devil and stuff. And they might not tell it in the beginning of their careers because it would ruin them, but as time goes on, you hear phrases of the devil in their music, and all of it. The reality is because they're in the devil's game, they're in the devil's realm of control, if you will. And I was entering in that. God was, pretty much saying, you know what, you have to make some choices here. If you don't make your choices soon, you're fully shunning the Holy Spirit. There's one sin that is unforgivable, and that's shunning the Holy Spirit. If you shun the Holy Spirit, you basically, have push God to his maximum level of grace, and I was very close there. And I mean that in the sense, you know, I could go through bottles of alcohol, so much weed, and still be conscious, still be knowing what's going on. The reason why is I was feeding my demons. You know, that was the reality. I was legitimately feeding my demons, and because I was doing that, you know, they were working within me because of it. The more evil you did, or I did I should say, the more power I gained on the evil side. And that's kind of scary if you think about it, but it is what it is. That's just how it works. Same thing on God's side. The more good you do, the more God you're going to feel towards you. And I mean that in the sense, God, he doesn't treat anyone any differently, but there is different levels of spiritualism. Like there's, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but you know, you're on a spiritual journey, and the reality behind that is you literally are walking your way towards heaven, if you will. Not on a physical, but on a mental side. You know, you're training your mind to think more heavenly and whatnot. I was doing the opposite, and God was like, you know what, you're about to hit the point of no return. And till this point, I never was demonized fully. I was demon listening. I say there's two different types of demon possession. You know, everyone deals with this. You know, the demons and the devil, he can whisper ideals into your head and whatnot, and you choose to listen to him or not. And I chose to listen to him because, you know, ultimately that was the only way to get where I wanted to go and whatnot. But yeah, if you start listening to that, that's a form of possession, because they're controlling you by suggestion. Okay, but now I was getting to the point where I was having out of body experiences. Now, what I mean by that is, imagine being able to feel and see your hands, but you're like viewing it from above. Okay, trippy, if you will, and like, whoa, is that possible? It's very possible. The reason why is, you know, you're so possessed, they're doing everything for you. Mainstream people will even tell you this. I went on stage and I lost myself, I blacked out. Wait, what do they mean? They literally were out and not presently there. Most people don't get to witness what's going on. That's why I say it's kind of trippy. God was allowing me to witness, well, this is what's going to happen if you chose to go down this path. You will be fully not there, and when you're not there, anything can go on. Absolutely anything. And that scared me, by the way. It scared the crap out of me, like tremendously scared me. So it actually took me to get to that level, at that point, for me to actually say, well, man, I might want to get God back in my life. And that's where it gets crazy. You know, being so messed up, so drunk, so high. You know, I called to God once, and you know, I was like, you know, you need to show me, or stop playing games with me, because, you know, I compare it to a tug of war. My soul was being pulled that way and that way, and literally I felt it within, like I literally felt my soul being pulled, and it's crazy, you know, but everyone actually, till this day, that's happening to them. It's not usually to that extreme, but for some people it may be, you know, depends how far gone you are, if you will. But yeah, I called to God and I started reading my Bible for the first time again. I started reading Genesis, and I was like, you know what, if you're going to start getting back to God, you might as well start from the beginning. And I read it, and I was like, you know what, I know this, because, you know, being raised religiously, it was kind of like reading something and like, well, I already read it, I know it, this isn't helping me, this is pointless. So I shut the book. A week later went on, and I had that same experience again, you know, basically being fully possessed and whatnot. And I called to God again. I'm like, you know what, you better really, really show yourself to me. If you don't, I'm just going to choose the devil, because I'm already pretty much professional level of what I need to do in that area. It only makes sense to go down that pathway, you know. So I went down that pathway. Let me actually back up. I didn't go down that pathway, but, you know, my heart said that's what you're going to do. But I'll give God one last try, because, you know, why not? Understand, you know, you're being so messed up to have clarity to even decide to do any of that. That's a miracle. It really is. I opened my Bible, and I didn't even open it, I should say. Before I opened it, you know, in the moment of doing all that, saying all that to myself, you know, God said, read Romans. I was like, Romans, man. You know, it was a very, very long time hearing it or even reading it, because, you know, most people, they know the majority of the stories of the Bible, but I started reading it, and it scared me. Now, what I mean by scared me, it scared me in the sense it talked directly to me. You know, the Bible for the first time was real, as in, it had a real connection that was personal and I could relate to, as in God himself was, directly talking to me. And it scared me to the point I almost wanted to shut the Bible, because I was like, that's not possible. The Bible is just fables, it's just not real. But it was. It talked so directly to me that, I had no choice but to read all of it. And I read all of it and I almost cried, because it was just that, surreal. It was so real. After, doing that, I said no more, no more. And by all means, it's easy to say something, but to enact it is a whole other story, especially when it comes to drugs and stuff like that. It's a whole other story. I fought through it and whatnot, and the second I chose more of God, God started really entering into my life, if you will, because I gave the permission. That's the thing people don't understand. You have to give God permission and fully give him permission to work in your life, for him to actually work in your life. On the devil's standpoint, it's the opposite. The devil just pushes and forces, and it's only God keeping him away from you all the way, because reality-wise, the devil just wants to kill you. Go back, the devil was trying to kill me years ago. Kill yourself, kill yourself. You think that was God saying that? No. You think that was me saying that? No, that was like a demon saying that. Kill yourself, kill yourself. And that's because, God knows the beginning to the end. I mean, he knows every single thing that's going to happen. The craziest part is, the more I started reading my Bible and whatnot, I still felt like, maybe I had demons in my life, and like demons like holding on. So I prayed one time on the way to, work and whatnot, and it's kind of crazy, I'm a very alert driver, if you will. Every like 30 seconds or less, I'm looking in all 3 mirrors. That's just how I am. I prayed something saying, God, get all these demons out of my life. I looked in my mirror, prior to that, no one was there. I looked again, and a car was there. A neon car, to be actually frank. And then on top of that, I only looked for a brief second, but I saw 3 faces. 3 faces that, it's kind of like a deja vu moment. You see them, you don't know why you know them, but you know them. And for a car just to pop out of nowhere, see 3 faces clearly, you usually don't look in your mirror going about 60 miles per hour and see 3 faces and like have that kind of, realization. But I had that realization. It was like a deja vu moment. But as I went forth, I looked back in my mirrors again and they were gone, just gone. And that was God basically, showing me in a physical form, those were your demons, now they're gone. My grace is here, my love's here, the Holy Spirit is now in you. Within that same minute, I felt my heart again, which sent chills down me, You have to understand, I was heartless, emotionless. Yeah, I could control my emotions, have all these emotions, be happy, be sad and all that, but I never felt it. I only felt it, it's really hard to explain. I only felt it kind of if it was really, really dramatic or really, really intensifying. And other than that, I never felt it. But I've actually felt my heart. I felt blood going through me again, which really is actually, in elaboration to that, that's really the Holy Spirit coming within and fulfilling me. And, when that happened, it made me actually cry, because for the first time I felt alive again. I felt like, wow, there's actually something other than just me here, there's other things, and it was a very emotional moment. On top of that, as the day progressed and on, it's like I was given new eyes. I saw stuff for the first time again, as in things were beautiful. Like, that's the only way to explain them. They were gorgeous, stunningly gorgeous. You go see nature and you're like, well, that's, nature. But no, for the first time again, I was seeing it clearly, if that makes sense. I even recall talking to my mom, and I was like, did you notice people doing landscaping like that? That must be a new thing, or this and that. And I think they, at first were like, this kid's gone crazy, man. But it was really, for me, for the first time, actually dwelling off self, dwelling off satanic stuff, dwelling off fame, money, and all that, and actually, for once, living in the moment, living in God's nature, living in what is so beautifully there for us. And I, was seeing it for the first time again, because for years, I'm talking years, that meant nothing to me. It was like, well, yeah, man, it's there, but whatever, But no, I saw it for the first time again. Even to this day, nature is so beautiful to me. I feel like, that's the realest you can feel God, because, God's still presently there in nature, because it's His nature, it's His work. You go into a city atmosphere, you don't feel that. You feel the rushness, the busyness, the just sexuality of it and whatnot, if you will. And for me, I feel, since I've been invited, or since I invited demons in my life, I know the difference of God's presence and their presence. And when I go into a city, I sometimes feel that still. I feel, wow, this city is very sinful. I can feel that. Some people are like, well, you're a little crazy, but that's just because if you live with something for so long, you know it. It's kind of like saying to someone, you love that person, and they're like, well, I don't know. It's because they haven't felt it yet. They haven't had that genuine moment. And I was having that genuine moment, and I guess you'd say really put things in perspective, if you will. As time went on through that, I got rebaptized and whatnot, because you don't do the stuff I did and think it's okay. I'm talking about I did tremendous stuff that it's just downright shameful, downright disgraceful. It's only out of love God even kept me alive, to be honest. Like, you read the Bible, God struck that person down from heaven with lightning and whatnot because they're that sinful. Yeah, that was me. I should be the guy that walks into a church and they burst into flames, more or less. That's how evil I was. The journey still is rough. Don't get me wrong. You don't have such past anything, and don't expect it to follow you. It will follow you. That's why on the daily, you hear me say this a lot. On the daily, you gotta talk to God. If you don't, the past can creep in like a nightmare. Like it's a ghost of yesterday. And for me, it's like a ghost of me of yesterday. Some days I look in the mirror, and those days, I haven't really called to God yet. I haven't prayed with Him, and I see a reflection of myself that's like, yo, I don't recognize you. That's not you. Because, God, once you call on to God again, He makes a new you. And it's a beautiful thing, it really is. But, at the same time, it's a daily commitment. It's a daily call out to God. If you don't, you're in trouble. You're in danger, by all means. Don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. I never say I am. People all the time, it's human nature to do this. They look up to people. And, they look up to them. Like, say if you say you're a pastor, say you're some religious person, they're going to look up you and instantly judge you. And then it gives a bad name towards God when you screw up. But that's where I gotta come and really state this. Don't ever look to me as a God. Don't ever look to me and say, well, He's perfect, because I'll tell you what, you'd be greatly disappointed. I still screw up all the time, but that's me still learning. That's me still progressing onward. Still me growing on a spiritual side. But as long as I'm still growing, still progressing upward to heaven, calling to God, that's what all that matters. The devil likes to come in and say, you know what, you screwed up today, man. Nope, you can't make it. The reason why is the devil ultimately wants to kill you, wants to destroy you. There's no in between. He's not going to treat you any differently than anyone else. He might be throwing that false light of, oh yeah, I'll give you all this and this and this and this if you do this and this and this for me. God doesn't ever say that. God's like, just love me, follow me, that's all that matters. And out of love, you want to do stuff for God. Out of love, you want to help and share it to others. Not because, oh well, if I don't, I'm not going to make it to heaven. No, God doesn't need you to do His work. Not at all. Only thing He needs of you is your attention, your heart, your desire towards Him. He's jealous of it. If you are more into something else than God, as in making like a sport or a game or a movie or music like I did, your God, your all, God's very jealous. Why? Because He knows within your heart He's not there. He might be in your mind, but if He's not fully 100% in your heart, in your life, in your thoughts, in your just everyday encountership on a relationship side, He's going to be jealous. It's kind of like, take like a relationship. Imagine if you were out in public, for example, you have a girlfriend and whatnot, and you're checking out other girls, or the opposite, you're a girl and you're checking out other guys. One of you two are going to get jealous. Why? Because you made a commitment to each other, not to everyone else. And, people don't view that with God. That's how God is. You choose God, He wants to have a relationship with you. Now, all means is a whole other type of relationship, but that's the best way to compare it. He wants that relationship desperately with you because He knows just how corrupt everything is, how much you really need Him. But He's the perfect gentleman. He's the best example there is. That's why you look to Him, not other people. Yeah, it's healthy and good to have mentors, people you look up to and whatnot, but don't look up to Him as you do God, because that's God. You can't compare God to anyone else because you just can't. You look to God for all of your answers. And when you do that, He enlightens you, and as time goes on, you notice it. You have clarity moments of past things, why this happened, that happened, and whatnot, and it's beautiful. For me personally, considering I've walked so far from God, I have so many clarity moments all the time. I have a thought of the past, and I'm like, yo, why did that happen? I'm like, yo, God, why did that happen? Bam, I have it. Why? Because I have a connection with God now, But until you make that connection, God's not going to give you the ability to have such, clarity. Why? Because you don't deserve it. Reality-wise, you don't deserve it. It's kind of like, basically, going into a business side, or going to someone that has very good relationship and wanting to know everything about them and expect them to tell you. Yeah, they would tell you a lot, but you can't have a personal one-on-one like you would if they were your best friend. It's just what it is, and that's how God is. He wants to enlighten you. He wants to help you, guide you, but He also wants that relationship. People pray to God all the time for this and that, but then something bad happens and they're like, oh God, why did you do this to me? They're not viewing it as in, well God, why can't you, help me get through this? They're more like blaming God for the issue, forgetting there's good and evil out there. And a lot of people, I think, live like that. I watched something a little while ago. It's basically saying, people worship society 6 days of the week and then they worship God 1 day of the week. And it's like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense actually, because that's what reality is. Most people do that. Oh yeah, I'm gonna bring God into the equation when I need Him, or I'm gonna bring God into the equation on, the Sabbath and whatnot. But during the week, I got this and that. Do I really need to spend time with Him? And then they become spiritually dead. And I noticed that, when I first started coming back into the church, I really noticed that people were spiritually dead, and it scared me. It scared me big time. I'm like, yeah, man, I purposely and knowingly went the other way, but you chose God still, and you're still exactly where you were, but wait, I'm actually going to say maybe worse off than where you were prior to that? That scares me. It scares me on my journey, coming in, being a new Christian, if you will, seeing that, they really aren't genuine with God. That's what it kind of told me, ultimately. And, it kind of made me, as time went on, saying, well, you better help others. And what I mean by that is, you just got to share your knowledge, share your experience, share what God has done for you, and I think other people will relate to it, really. But also, I want to say this and say this again, you got to have that daily time with God. If you don't have that daily time with God, you're not going to grow. God will be there out of grace and out of love, but you won't grow with Him. That's just what it is. You won't grow with Him. You got to spend that daily time with Him. And I mean, even if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, as in read His Bible for that long, that's not much. Out of 24 hours, that's nothing. Nothing at all. But that's a start. The more you start reading it, the more you're going to feel the need of it. You really will, because you get this refreshment from it. When Jesus was on earth, you hear in the Bible, He was up all night praying to God, and then, you kind of think about it, well, He was up all night praying to God, but yet He went through the day still energized? Like, how's that possible? And the reality was, God gave Him energy. God helped Him. Why? Because Jesus, ultimately saw how much He needed Him, living in such a sinful place. And on top of that, it kind of tells you why He never sinned when He was on earth. He had that, he had such a connection to God that God helped Him through everything. And for me, as time goes on and as I grow spiritually, I tend to do that more. Instead of thinking to myself like I used to, I try to think, and when I think, I put God into the equation. Hey God, what do you think about this? And it helps. It helps a lot, because you're reaching out to God, and God loves when you reach out to Him. Why? Because it's a form of prayer, if you will. It's a form of communication. You know, you can't physically talk to God. You can't spiritually, well, you can spiritually talk to God by all means, but you can't physically ever see Him and whatnot. You can sometimes physically feel Him, but you have to be careful with that. Don't trust your feelings ever. The devil can physically touch you if God allows, and God will allow that to happen to certain people. I won't lie to you. It is, you know, people tell you that I've felt Satan touching me. I've felt his presence. I've felt a lot of stuff. I've never seen the devil. I've never seen God. But I like to say I've seen angels. I've seen demons. And I say that in the sense, you know, just in people. On a possession side, I've seen them. And then in people, I've seen like angels, as in they're just so loving, so kind. There's no other way to explain them but as being like an angel. What I challenge y'all is start looking to God and not human people. Yeah, go to human councils as in your pastors and whatnot, but don't ever in your life view someone to the point of a God. If you do that, you're in some dangerous grounds. You might look at me one day and say, wow man, you're very holy, you're very that, because on a daily I'm only progressing on a more spiritual side. So by doing that, I'm reflecting God more and more. But I'll clearly and every single time tell you, I'm the worst guy there is out there. I'm a sinner. I'm someone who deserves death 1,000,000 times over. That's just the reality. And if you view someone to the point that they're a God, that's not cool. That's taking it too far. You can't ever worship idols or anything like that. That's why in the Ten Commandments it says do not worship idols. And an idol can be anything. I mean, an idol can be anything. An idol really or an idol basically is this. Anything you put above God, that's an idol, that's a God. And that's where you have to be careful. That's why you have to have a relationship with God to help you be more humble, to help you be more focused on Him, because we live in a day and age where it's hard to be focused on God. It is absolutely hard. But if you try to seek Him, you know, He'll be there. If you seek upward, and when by upward is in lift your thoughts upwardly, you don't have to look up, just seek upwardly by calling to God, and He'll be there. That's a guarantee, that's a promise. But if you go to someone and start viewing them as a God, viewing them as someone who is a messenger from God, etc., etc., you're in dangerous grounds, because you're just in dangerous grounds. No human will ever be God. No human will ever be such a replica. No human will ever represent God to the point that you go to them as though He is God. God doesn't work that way. Yeah, there's people who have such insight to God, but keyword insight, they're not representing Him to the point that you go to them instead of going to God. You go to them when you feel like, you know, maybe you get answers and, you know, you need some advice and whatnot. But even then, I can guarantee you this, you seek after God and He can give you just as much. It's kind of incredible how your brain is wired. You have a wireless connection to heaven. A connection that's so connected that it doesn't matter where you're at, God will be there. You have a connection that's so there that all you have to do is simply say, God, what's up? And God would come. But also you have to do it in a respectful way. I say that in the sense, you know, people use the name of God so wrongly nowadays. They say, oh my, you know, and that's so disrespectful. It's so disrespectful. God's not going to come when you say it in that standpoint. God's not going to come if you say it and then joke in your head. Yeah, because God's not going to come to someone who's jokingly going after Him. But if you come in desperate need, if you come with a seeking heart, oh, God will be there. I know He will be there. That's a guaranteed promise. He'll be there. But until you seek like that, He won't be there. Or I should say, you won't feel Him there. God's always there. But the there I'm talking about is you would like feel it and you would know He's there. But you need to just journey onward and pray to God daily. Spend time with Him, and you'll be golden. Thank you.